Good day, my name's Graham, and I would like to talk about the idea that ancient aliens come along sometime and sort of reprogram the DNA of the hominids to create modern man. I want to suggest that this story, I'm deeply suspicious about why this story has been propagated, and maybe I can't cover that in just one video, but because I understand evolution rather well, I may not be in the academia, that's through circumstances. I understand evolution enough to put a book together which describes somewhat what I'm going to describe today. Now, the evolution of humanity, of human, is a very complex story, and it goes back maybe 15 million years, not just 6 million years from when it says chimps and the first hominoids separated. Now, if you look at that, and it becomes an extremely complex pattern. You need a series of different maps to show the different water levels in the seas at different stages, to then begin to understand the journeys and then the isolations. Like people have a journey and they become isolated in an area, and then they start to breeding advantageous traits, just as Darwin explained for the finches on Galapagos Islands. Now, there's been much said about the origins of man being in Africa. This is now proved to be a furphy, or a politically correct way, because we don't all have the same blood group. If we all were from the exactly same origin, someone's got to explain the evolution of different blood groups. And I can't do that, and no one, whether people can trigger that. Maybe there's a reason for it, to do with the different aspects of gravity or within the Earth's field and things like that. We don't know. But the thing is, the basic genetic pattern that is in, say, the chimpanzee, that then is transferred to the next branch, if you like, doesn't mean that the next branch what went away couldn't breed back with the chimpanzee. This is a very important thing to understand, the journey of hominid to become modern human. How long a time is it, and can we not now breed with chimpanzees? This is a very interesting question. Lions can breed with tigers, two totally different animals, supposed to be different species, yet they can breed. Now, and other cats can breed as well. Now, humans are a variety of breeds spread across hundreds and hundreds of centuries, whereas one tribe, say the original tribe what separated from a chimp tribe, the family, they walked away. They didn't, it only happened with one individual, or maybe a number of individuals within that one family, because of something in the environment which changed them, whatever that was. But people started with feet first. They stood up, and then were better able to use their hands. It's a very complex story. You need a board and chalk and the means to show the diaspora and the journey, where it's leapfrogged all over the place, and wherever the origins were, there could have been, as far as I can see, in the Mediterranean and what is the Black Sea, could have been the origins, and maybe a couple of other areas, after earlier hominids had settled in those areas and began then to develop traits in that area. But then a long time ago it began to build the various races. The difference between Chinese and the Nordic blondes with blue eyes and people in Africa, the Negroids, is far too great to be simply said it happened 30,000 years ago and suddenly we had all these different races. Makes absolutely no logical sense at all, because in the paintings in the caves in France we can see extremely advanced artwork. That's not Stone Age man's artwork, that's just brilliant artists. That anyone sees that, you go, wow. Stone Age figures and art is the stick figures you see on caves in Australia and other places in the world, they're stick figures. That's Stone Age art. That is not Stone Age art. So therefore, there's a story there we're not quite sure about, because of the ice ages and the seas going up and down has basically hidden most of the evidence, if you like, for any real understanding of the origins of all the different races on Earth. But we can take two races, we can take two different peoples, because of what I've always known, take that how you like, that the Cro-Magnon man, or we'll call modern man, which I don't like the phrase modern man because it means nothing, because it's hard to determine what that means exactly. But that and Neanderthal, when they bred together, and I always knew in my heart they bred together, it was obvious, self-evident by examining people's faces alone and body shapes alone told me there was interbreeding there. Now, why they separated, why they came about this two different sort of breeds of human, or humanid if you want to call them that, but to me they're just humans, and always have been. 500,000 years ago there was a great big drought in the world, and that caused a diffusion, that caused certain challenges to be overcome by different tribes that went different ways. That was the beginning of many of the races were isolated in areas where they were able to survive in during this great drought on planet Earth. Now, the Cro-Magnon man, I suspect, evolved as different facial features, less hairy body, because simply they went fishing and they overcome the challenges of living by fish, and it created a different protein, different enzymes, and a different way of gaining the nutrition than if you were a hunter-gatherer following the beasts of burden and the beasts across the plains. Like the Neanderthals were expert hunters and trappers of beasts. At some stage, many thousands of years before scientists or suggest it happened, Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthal man bred. They didn't fight in wars, they bred. Naturally, it is always the natural case that the female will be excited by the new and exotic. This is just a natural occurrence, and this is the very basis of primogeneity, if you like, of all new breeds of human, is that the female of one species, maybe she's an older type of species if you like, meets the newer male, and she will be attracted to this new male as it is today, wherever it is in the world. The new male may have, and the different facial features of Cro-Magnon man compared to Neanderthal man would have made him more attractive to the Neanderthals females. It's as simple as that. There was no rapes. They may have cared occasionally, but was it rape? Well, then, because there was no, probably far less sexual inhibition than there is now with moralistic rules brought about to create a more civilized society. Civilized society is based on moralistic rules, not technology. That technology enables civilized society to become wealthy and have a life of more of ease, but it actually is the moral values intrinsic to the society which is the greater value in the wealth, if you like. That's the greater capital. But that's a philosophical point on what you call advanced civilizations are. They're not technical civilizations, they're moral values. And aliens may have had advanced technology. Whether they're advanced civilizations or not is a totally different matter, or a very contentious matter, when there would have been a great big latter elite and all the rest would have been subordinate to the elite with no chance of progressing up the scales, no chance of progressing through your own abilities, very little chance of that. Everyone was a mass, but the mass of people and the mass elite. Now, And it's a warning. Now, I don't trust the idea that we're suddenly promoting the idea there's aliens in the Antarctic and stuff like that, and these Annunaki are there, and they're going to come and tell us all then they're going to be the new gods in a new world, which is extremely a very regressive step for humans. To have it that there's this elite, what then we're all going to obey, and that takes us back to when the Vatican ruled Europe, and when back to 1,000 years or more, or when the Romans ruled the world or whatever. That is not a modern civilization. That is a very, very old-fashioned idea of running the human system, if you're or human society. Whether it's civilized or not is a totally contentious matter. Just because you've got everyone organized to do exactly what they want because they must only obey, they cannot question authority, that is not civilization, that is slavery by another name. That's subordinate, making all humans subordinate to some sort of elite. It's not civilization at all, it's destruction of all the humane advances we've made over the last few hundred years since we shook the Vatican yoke off our throats and are allowed to read for ourselves and find knowledge and discover knowledge for ourselves, which then proved that humans can advance their own technology and their own civilization through the understanding and insights and learnings they gain by discussing these things, as they always have done for hundreds of thousands of years, around a fire with a brandy, some intoxicated something or other, and you sit around and questioning each other's logic, and that's who advance the insight. That's how all human advancement, since I can see, has come along. This idea that suddenly the gods are going to come and save us scares the bejesus out of me. I understand evolution rather well, and I suggest all those people who seem to be wanting these Annunaki or these gods to come and save us from what exactly? Save us from what? What are we going to be saved from? Debt? Your own immorality? Your own poor knowledge? No thank you. No thank you. All individuals have an intrinsic right to battle for their genetic future and the genetic potential to be improved over the generations. That is, I believe, if there's a God, that's God's will. If there's some idea that and that God is not a visible thing, it's invisible, it's in the spiritual. There are no visible gods. They're just another being, wherever they are, even if it was the Annunaki, they're not gods. They're just another being called a god because they had superior powers to the people who they came and ruled over. That's all. The idea they were gods is anathema to the idea of being in itself, and actually anathema to the idea of God itself. If you think about it for 2 minutes, and what God may be is not describable, because God is in the spirit. It's not in the physical form of these Annunaki or whatever they were, if they actually existed, if it's not just a myth. Because we don't know, because humans advanced so far in the past, so more so than we quite understand because of lack of evidence, that we don't know that prior civilizations were on Earth before the Ice Age and before great catastrophes. They had plenty of time. As far as 5,000 years from pyramids to now to be where we are. Well, think about that. How many times do you do 5,000 again, and how many different ways do you come up with doing things? And that's the important lesson here. It's about economic niches. And as I said, evolution is quite a complex, extremely complex narrative to explain human races and all these races. And I haven't got the time and space to do it here, but it can be done. You need maps of different sea levels at different stages, then begin to give you a picture point, if you like, of where the isolations were, isolationist niches were, economic niches. Then that developed the different tribes, if you like, which began the different sort of races, if you like, and where they actually came from, where they spring from, depending on the time scales involved. But this is a warning. All those people who don't believe evolution is a fact, it is a fact. And then to think that this God created us and all that, I mean, we all bow to this God, is extremely scary if we understand what that means and who might be behind that. Maybe just elite politicians, bankers and what have you, who want to control humans' destiny instead of allowing nature, humanity, to control its own destiny. It will not be by merit in the future you are promoted, it will be by bowing and kissing and bowing to some god or some elite or those who are nearer a god. So we've gone back to before Martin Luther, if you like, all of a sudden, and that's basically where these people are taking humanity if we allow this. I, for one, I'm very, very skeptical about this Anunnaki thing, and now why it's all suddenly being promoted, and all those people getting, I suggest, sucked into this. Be very aware what you wish for. Wishing for God is wishing for an elite force to rule over your thoughts and your beings and everything you think. You're no longer your own person, your humanity has been taken away and handed over to someone else to tell you what sort of human you should be. And we fought against that forever. Those of us in the north have always been free, understand intrinsically what real freedom is. And it's those of us in this particular, if you like, genre of humanity who these people are trying to stop, because we are the free thinkers. And the being free to think and free to seek knowledge is a path. That's the pathway all humans should be on, and that's the one that ultimately sets everyone free, not the one where you've got a god, a pope, or whatever it is, an imam, a politician, a celebrity telling you how to be. You have to learn to think for yourself and question everything. Anyway, my name's Graham, just bring you some insight into something I think you ought to be aware of those promoting aliens as the gods. Thank you.